Thanks for participating and leaving comments. This is part 3B of the audiobook, Two Worlds. This part continues the discussion of advanced group attack defense concepts that can save your life against many attackers. These audiobooks are focused on bettering martial arts instructional guidance to navigate the mental minefields relating to current defense strategies against armed multiple attackers. This is about making the impossible possible again by accepting there are alternatives to be considered to better complete your martial arts experience when facing many motivated attackers trying to down you fast. The topics covered builds on a growing series of important mental strategies that needs to be considered. Abridged edition. The End of Martial Arts. Two Worlds. Part 3B. By Looming Affect. Copyright 2013 Looming Affect. This audio version is licensed for your personal enjoyment only. This audiobook may not be resold. Warning: it is strongly recommended that children and adults who are not experienced in martial arts should not attempt application of the principles of this book unless under the supervision of a currently certified instructor, coach in the fighting arts. My belief is that there has been other people developing similar and hopefully more effective skills than my humble attempts. My aim was to develop and expand views on how to fend off multiple attackers that will delight interested pundits and help martial artists on their journey. Please listen to previous parts to understand concepts and jargon. Creating effects. Just by being present you affect the surroundings in so many ways. We dress up with war paint in expectation people will respond. We are quick to grasp that aggressive tattoos and muscle bulk symbolize you better back off or else. We are always thinking of how to get a specific effect to progress our agenda on life's playing fields. It is the enhancement of effects that counts to excite one's drive to add advantages by training techniques more than anyone else. This is the mainstay of avoiding being the imposter in most martial arts. We buy into the idea of that bigger and better weapon will win the day by delivering the best effect. Humans secretly or inadvertently are driven to hurt people for a bizarre sense of control or joy. Somehow forgetting they could be the victim as well, facing the end of a barrel. It is a daily thing to meet people exercising their passive or aggressive behavior aiming to affect or dominate the people around them. Nobody wants to be second-chanced. Social people need the rules to fulfill their desire to at least dominate one person. Fighting begins with thoughts to get ahead or sabotage the proceedings. If you cannot create enough effect, people around you will soon ignore you and make you feel invisible. Bullies are those passive-aggressive people who know how to get recognition at the expense of some patsy. Wise people know that everyone wants to rise above another. The social game of one-upmanship is the basis of every plan. Even within a team, people must know their pecking order. The choice to play the game stems from the hope there is a chance to better someone else. This is a great selling point to draw smart participants to gamble and try their luck. Bettering someone else is the lure of any competition, helping players to follow the rules at what cost. Everyday people will follow the principles like the art of war to best influence and win by whatever means. So, let the battle begin and try your luck. But what if you have no intention to play? Well, that is virtually impossible unless you are not there in the first place. The realization that you must affect others is socially alluring. The energy world is no different, decidedly wanting to affect attackers and make the job easier. The catch is multiple live threats leaves little time to influence each aggressor effectively, one at a time. To do a social makeover on all people approaching is impossible. The attackers are obviously drawn to the target to win. This is why you feel pressured to perform or accept the role of victimhood and submit. You are made very aware that your resistance is going to be futile and painful if you resist. The game being played is obviously the dominance game. The threat is overwhelming, so you are being readied for the desired effect being submission. So, what can you do to access tools to affect the group, to turn the attack back and regain advantage? It would be tremendous to have something bigger and better than the attackers can create and dish out. Meeting violence with violence tends to draw the attackers together to do their worst. The purpose of the group in the first place is to reduce the burden on any one attacker. This means the stress levels are down for the group compared to the target. So, it is wise for the group to down the victim fast to avoid any surprises. Never give the victim time to resist as the safest bet for the group. In response to the enormity of group pressure, the victim panics as freedom is lost, having to hit hard and fast as the odds for victory fade. This is an example of where resistance is a natural answer to aggression. Panic can be a good way to override the imposters in our solutions, effectively helping distortions to disappear into a haze of desperation. When considering life's endeavors, if you lose the lead, you lose the chance to affect others. By stepping back and fostering the defensive mindset, puts you behind the 8-ball, bunkering down waiting for the attack. Hence the staples of hesitating, anticipating and expecting erodes any lead before you accepted the group's attention. It's no wonder why people train harder and longer to avoid the experience of the initial shock of inaction before the counterattack. The effect is further solidified by the numbers game in a group attack, incorporating lots of unpredictable violence. This means the victim has now been left with no preparation to access any automatic defensive moves that fits the chaos of a multiple attack. A shift in attitude is needed to avoid decision paralysis when facing the chaos delivered by many attackers. This is achieved by understanding how to steal the lead when facing a multitude of demands from the many aggressors standing before you. The ideal in the energy world is to never sacrifice one's lead for the sake of one person's defensive proposal. All it takes is one glance to connect with the approaching attackers and the proposition has been accepted to face the impending chaos. Therefore, how can you stop losing your lead and avoid being the victim of an enormous multiple attack? It is fine to activate the defensive response of situational awareness to avoid the impending doom, but our habits of connecting to the attacking group's propositions is way too strong. We are too eager to have a look first, before any life-saving decision is made. The attackers are aware of this and have the advantage of scaring the victim into submission, knowing there is no counter against their greater numbers and superior firepower. The group attack approach is intended to elicit your disadvantage, giving them the valued lead and continued command. The important takeaway is, the choice to accept the presenting proposition is always yours, not the attacker's. Now that you have hesitated and allowed the problem to be urgent, thus leaving you with one choice, which is to resist the attackers. Self-defense is like that, narrowing choices where your trained responses direct you to harm the attackers. Any aggressive counter plan will fall short against many attackers unless you maintain your lead, meaning they will follow your actions once the connection is made. This is like the uncooperative rat scurrying away from the many hungry cats, beating all the cat's intent. Simply, the attackers must grab your attention to be effective, and if they don't, they are following you. Your early and decisive response reduces the attacker's threatening behavior, making you the small target, which can confuse incoming attackers. The key difference in the energy world is, you have no intention to control the attacker's intent. This is done by letting go of the threatening proposal, while leaving the attackers be who they want to be. You have no intention to take away another person's liberties. Even the technique of shouting the word "stop" is a liberty remover, but it works well in security to stop the individual in their tracks. All we need to do is focus on self-liberty and freedom. This can only occur if you have no social connections with your aggressors. In the energy world there is no desire to do harm, or to scare individuals. This is the opposite to socially orientated people who hate to be rejected and do not appreciate neglect when they have harmful agendas to fulfill. The effect is always a disappointment when there is no one to submit. The catch for socially minded attackers is, there will not be any recognizable counter-response to dismantle. It is like hiding the ball in a football game. The small target approach makes no sense to people with ill intent. All that the aggressors sense is their lost lead, now reduced to trying to understand the effect of the counter, leaves them hesitating, while searching for answers. It is our social need to be defensive and violent in many cases, rapidly narrowing their choices. The group believes they have the power to impress, so there should be no questions about dominating one victim. The victim's ability to socially disengage effectively bends the attacker's viewpoint away from dominating the situation. It is a mental counter to weaken the aggressor's intent. The advantage should be in the hands of the attackers to stop the target escaping the mental trap. But I asked myself, why are the cats scrambling so hard to catch the uncooperative rat? Yes, the rat has used flight to survive the onslaught, but more importantly somehow the rat defocused from being the victim. It is our valued visualizations of past dominances that let you down. Fighting back means you are following the attacker's lead with the intent to do harm, leaving you behind time and under enormous stress to perform. In this case the attackers will enjoy their advantage and down the victim. It is a good thing that a group of attackers are socially organized as a collective, liable to hesitate while wanting to pounce. Just a reminder, this all depends on how violent and unannounced the attackers want to be. An ambush is the worst attack to face, as there is no time to prepare for all parties. There is much to blame on our social conditioning when time is wasted when facing a potential multiple attack. Situational awareness is socially determined, thus plagued with many time wasters driven by people's need to mark their territory. It is the idea that chosen areas are made safe by drawing white lines, ending up being extremely dangerous when facing a violent attack. The resulting hesitation of one's indecision is based on organized social statements telling us to wait for the right signal to counter the aggression. In the energy world, aggressive situations are treated as the worst, always needing an immediate disengagement from social time wasters. This does not mean becoming paranoid, thinking every shadow will be a group attack. It is as simple as sensing the social funnel trying to trap you before the situation escalates. Your safety comes from the view that the world is always in motion, unfocused and filled with opportunities. Whereas the act of daydreaming has no life-saving purpose. Just as a simple reminder, everything must happen at speed in the energy world, aiming to avoid the habit of procrastinating. This means you are always busy, always going somewhere, and always maintaining your own lead. It appears antisocial, and this is your choice. The ideal of being fully disconnected from violence means no engagements are initiated or continued beyond a glance while in the moving world. All you need to do is remain busy with your personal tasks, leaving no room to connect and consider other people's problems. It is only our social side that needs connection, which leaves you open to be grabbed mentally and physically. The small target approach reduces social connections, thus making you less visible to socially led people. The resulting effect on the attacker is hesitation. It is only when a connection is made can the attackers plan and complete the attack. The size of the small target effect depends on when attackers work out you are not there to play their games. Like the rat, you have no intention to change the attacker's mindset. If you did, then you are connected and have the intent to play their games with the usual social deceptions. A connection means both parties are participating in the union and wanting control over the other. On the other hand, the self-made person has no need for social confirmations to find safety. The attackers are like the underbrush in a forest, which you need to break through to have a clear passage to an exit. Therefore, it is always your choice to engage the attackers, making each connection a self-made problem. Yes, the attacker's plan has to be scuttled, and this is achieved by your inattention. It is your speed of progress through the attackers and self-direction that helps you stay small enough as a target to avoid the incoming doom. When moving at speed, you always appear to be centering on the attacker's defenses without hesitation. As a response, the attackers stiffen or panel their body in preparation for impact. This is simply taking advantage of the stiffening response conditioned by a lifetime of experiencing impact. A defensive person always relies on their memories to form the parameters of the expected contest. The stiffening means the person has lost the lead and now has to withstand the impact. You could say, all is lost for the attackers as you are not there to fight them. The stiffening response is just hesitation. So, when the attacker has to change their intent due to your actions, you have been successful at bending the attack. The attacker unintentionally has to fear the impending impact, based on the expected weakening of their defenses. This is only true in the attacker's deepest thoughts. Fighters are more overtly familiar with bunkering as a sign of toughness, waiting to pounce back even harder. All counter-defenses reside in people's heads, so learning to take a few big hits on the face only assures your toughened advantage against a less experienced fighter. The head is the first thing that gets wrapped up, followed by the body when facing many attackers. The head wrap alone has proven effective against one opponent but fails against the onslaught delivered by multiple attackers. When multiple pressures are great enough, you will see the typical head and body wrap while lying on the floor screaming for help. Having to down the target as fast as the attackers can is instinctively the way to ease the burden on any one attacker by removing the head of the victim. If the victim takes up the challenge, it should be feeding time for the attackers. Technical victories against a head attack are only effective on the training floor, where the teacher mesmerizes the students by their step-by-step explanations. It is important to understand violence is always unexpected and devastating to the head. One would wish to avoid any surprise attack at all costs, like a coward punch. Maintaining speed and centering on the attacker's defenses reduces the potential of unseen attacks. Any approach to an attacker creates an apparent connection, leaving aggressive bystanders waiting for their turn. If your connection is meant to control any one attacker, which results in a full-on grab, you will be taken down. This is where one's social conditioning removes any safety advantage compared to what speed can do in the energy world. This means no connection with objects or aggressors aiming to maintain speed of progression. It feels like darting through the undergrowth of a dense forest. At speed, every action seems to arrive unconsciously, avoiding the urge to push branches and leaves away when speeding between the larger tree trunks. In the natural world, we are meant to push, hit and grab to gain control over your chosen targets at the cost of slowing progress. In the martial world, it's a habit to slow for more control, thus leaving one's head vulnerable not just from behind, but also from the front, ready for the opportunist to knock it off. In the fast-moving world of the scurrying rat, the moving mass of the one system prevents you from splitting mentally and physically from your path of least resistance. It is the speed of moving that keeps you consistent and a small target, making it possible to avoid resistance by staying present in real time. When the impact appears inevitable, the limbs do not extend and stay close to the body to maintain the speed of the one system, which can keep the mass moving. Anytime you try to aim the arrow or stretch out to hit the target, you split the system, resulting in a corresponding slowing of your progression. To slow your progression means you become a big target again, and the attackers can easily grab you and slam you into the ground. The hard part is seeing yourself outrunning the attack while freeing yourself from the resistance in front of you. This may be visualized by the rat darting through the cat's fast-moving claws. It is a matter of not acknowledging the cat's actions. This has little to do with ducking and weaving, which seldom outruns the offensive actions of the group. This difference can enlighten one's mental model of battle as a real-time event, not some planned-out event encapsulated by a series of technical moves. It takes two equals to tango. Resistance breeds resistance. A grab is a grab. Simply, if you connect, you just married yourself to another person, wondering when the divorce papers will be signed. I have mentioned several times that there are no techniques in the energy world, which would seem misleading to say the least. The hands, feet and body move as one system, allowing you to defocus from the intention to do targeted harm. Even for a martial artist, this would be hard to comprehend when every fighting thought is bound to a focal task, as if aiming a gun ready to fire. The one system is always available if you do not have a focal task. Just like walking and running, our body systems operate as one. The act of walking is very efficient and does not have a conscious connection except when adapting to changing surfaces of the ground. Who out there is going to explain, how do your feet know where and when to step when walking? There is no cognitive director managing every angle and dangle of each step. Somehow feet, body and mind are operating as one and seldom is overloaded by choices when walking. The magic of walking is beyond any technical excellence. It is only when we interfere with the natural rhythm do we now have to contend with judgments and adjustments. Another insight is there is no chance of over-controlling how we walk and run. Interestingly, other gross motor actions also have the synchrony with all bodily systems. Accessing the one system is essentially independent from conscious control, a mindless marvel to maintain consistency of a complex set of coordinations. The skill set backing the energy world cannot be defined as finely tuned techniques. This is what leaves most martial artists confused and even critical that mass movement like walking can be of value. The improbable notion of not having techniques is mind-blowing to say the least in the natural world. Techniques are the lifeblood of martial studies, and to remove them would be very disruptive. It will be a huge challenge for those who want to venture into a moving world where everything has no beginning or end. I cannot deny the cumulative insights backing techniques has played an extremely important role towards selling the martial dream. I do not think the rat wanted to stop to correct any part of its flight response and then decide on a fighting strategy to win against the superiority of the cats. I am aware flight behavior differs from fight behavior. I like to remind doubters the energy world was designed not for fighting, but as a strategy to cope with a well-motivated aggressive group of attackers with unknown weapons. I suggest, go ahead and try your best and dream on. Looming Affect. Looming aims to stall the attacker's decision-making processes by tapping into a natural response of avoidance when facing an uncontrollable and imminent impact. Again, this is a small target approach, forcing the attackers to lose their lead and constrain choices. As it is an energy world strategy, the execution is not about connecting with the attackers, but to affect their impression of what is about to happen. Looming takes advantage of a weakness in vision when a small object suddenly becomes large, affecting the visual field. When the object is fast-moving and small like a ball, it can be tracked efficiently and caught. If the object moves in a curved path, it is far less trackable, enabling a hook punch to sneak past defenses. Then there is the large object approaching like a bull, with lots of mass, where the best choice is to step aside. It is the rapid visual enlargement of an approaching object that reduces defensive actions in most cases. When a person of a lesser mass runs in unexpectedly, we still avoid the impact. Now, by acceleration and upping defensive time pressures, the apparent approaching body size increases rapidly, overloading the opponent's visual field. The reaction is one of hesitation and stepping aside. Looming makes it hard to measure and track the effect of the incoming mass. The speedy approach aims to fill the attacker's visual field with lots of information in the shortest amount of time, thus constraining the attacker's defensive thoughts. As this is not a fighting move, it allows you to use the attacker's hesitant gap to move on to the next attacker. More importantly, you have avoided the attacker's intended resistance while staying on path to safety. Looming always passes through the flak zone as the opponent's defensive choices are switched to avoidance, another example of bending the attack while moving at speed. This is achieved by using the attacker's natural response to avoid the expected damaging effects of an approaching large mass. If you split the one system and decide to use your limbs as defensive tools, the effect of looming is lost. By moving your limbs at the same speed as the body, your approach is made much more comfortable than firing off a series of techniques. The real value of using your body's speed and not your weapons is you will not have to compromise speed to move on to the next attacker. The effect on the attacker is a sense of helplessness, as one would feel in a car when crashing into a tree. The effect is made all the worse as the tree suddenly becomes big and a nightmare. The looming effect forces the opponent into real time, firing off a cognitive freeze, referred to as mental darkness. The darkness tends to stiffen the attacker's body just before expected impact, leaving a strategic defensive gap for you to pass by to an exit. At the same time, you have dismantled the attacker's aggressive intent, also you have mentally undressed their superiority by simply limiting choices. Looming works because the attackers want control over the approaching victim and will need time to obtain a good measure to develop constraining strategies. It is these mental calculations that phase the problem of compressed time, pressuring the attacker to readjust their intent to lessen the chances of injury. It is only natural to back off a little even in a fight situation, rather than stall the victim's progress. Looming is only made possible by your accelerated approach that centers the attacker's best defenses. The real value comes from knowing when to enlarge the body's visual size that stalls the attacker's counter-resistance. Any slowing of action will immediately void the effect of looming. The catch is, looming only grabs the mind of the attacker, not their physical capabilities. In the energy world, there is no intention to fight the attacker's strengths, aiming to prove a point of dominance. Looming is a strategy that takes advantage of knowing people's weaknesses beforehand when faced with time pressures. This is when decision processes are overwritten to achieve safety first, like a freeze response, where the attacker's resources are kept intact. This means the attacker only knows there is a problem to solve when it is too late to find an immediate counter. Looming takes place in a split second, forcing the attacker to step back for a moment. Again, looming is an outcome and not a technique that cannot be broken down into step-by-step technical actions. When observing looming, it is important not to see it as a single trainable event. It is happening because you are moving at speed and accelerating at the right time while centering on the attacker. It has been said people speed up to enter the flak zone as they expand their body like a bird spreading its feathers. Looming is a simple illusion eclipsing the opponent's vision at a crucial defensive moment. In the energy world, continuity must be maintained throughout the whole encounter, no matter how many attackers there are. To slow at any time means you have lost the looming effect, allowing more time to socially connect to the group while forfeiting progress to an exit. In the energy world, you cannot increase time on any one attacker, otherwise resistance will rise from many directions. It is a mystery why martial artists have to resist the attack and waste time, knowing that there are many more attackers to deal with. I know pundits do not like to be reminded of time constraints when facing a group attack. Fight know-how and technical defenses are timely, much cherished for their strategic manipulations and swift executions on one person. In a social fight they cannot be ignored. Talking down technical solutions is a no-no. As discussed, techniques are developed from snapshots, filtered through imagined realities of fight scenarios, and in some cases, they get tested in the ring. Much of the technical world is still waiting to be tested for efficacy in the ring, and more so against multiple attackers. There is no question, actual fighting excellence is available now and should not be ignored. The best are gladiators of modern, paid to be supreme athletes where techniques are being delivered with devastating results. Discerning pundits can learn to fight quickly when taught the stand-up and ground game approaches. Traditional approaches with their demonstrable techniques are a figment of a martial person's reality. Still, we hear the sentence, hit the attacker hard and they will go down. Most of these comments are based on the experience gained from one-on-one fights. I always ask, where are the motivated and violent attackers swarming in to do their worst as a secondary check on reality? It is great when pundits decide to venture away from their successes in the fighting world into another world of many attackers. Even with the best of techniques, the group attack is still considered the insolvable problem. I am sure it is hard to justify the transition into chaos. Truly it is a myth to be able to defend yourself effectively against many attackers. Why? Technical explanations are not the source for effective solutions. Looming is not a technique or a social fighting strategy, it is based on the opponent's freeze response that allows enough time for the victim to dart away to avoid the attacker's grabs. It is great that the problem can be placed back onto the attackers. Hesitation effect. Hesitation is one part of the fear triad, especially when facing a group attack. The other two are anticipation and expectation. It is a mental grab trapping a person in their own thoughts while ignoring the urgency of an imminent attack. Hesitation is a learnt habit that delays critical decisions. When adding urgency and uncertainty into the mix of a life threat, the hero suddenly turns into an imposter. You end up standing there soulless, looking for answers while feeling extremely vulnerable, realizing there is a mental gap by imagining the dangerous crush of many attackers. In preparation of expected events, we allow time to worry by anticipating and expecting the worst. Our thoughts have fallen off that unstable chair long before sitting on it. It is as if we are caught up in a cycle of negative assessments before we act. It is the internalization of the failing world that becomes the invisible force of hesitation. The resulting loss in attention is a serious hurdle in our real-time defenses. The issue is we listen to leaders in the field anchoring our thoughts onto imagined difficulties and then using sleight of hand to pull the rug from under us. It is always a good idea to consider other people's opinions, but not when facing the emergency of a life threat. Under time pressures, thinking unnecessary thoughts is not a good way to duck a bullet. It is good to realize experts have time to express their valued moves outside the time constraints of a true life threat. The informed teacher usually delivers their strategies with convincing stories to increase inattention, aiming to slip unquestionable, but apparently effective moves in, to the delight of onlookers. Techniques are the biggest cause of time wasting and hesitation, seen by periods of heroic posturing. Now add in unwanted urgency, hesitation becomes crippling. It is no wonder a well-armed martial artist never feels complete and hesitates. The martial artist is conditioned to carry a huge bag of effective moves to battle only to find out there is not enough time to use their cherished techniques. As an alternative viewpoint, ask why thugs hit and run. Hesitation is like closing both eyes for eternity. I do not think I can question how long they should stand there waiting. The horrible aspect of hesitation is we freeze while seeing the attack unfolding in our heads before we act. This loss of time turns on the urgency button, narrowing one's choices, making hesitation worse. People try to disguise their hesitation with a verbal preamble embellished with aggressive posturing, like excessive dancing around the ring. This will not do when facing many aggressive attackers. The fighting focus seen in the ring is ultimately based on hesitation. Any mental delays in acting, thinking, hoping, expecting for a better moment to control the opponent may end up working for a social fight. Hesitation is always based on mental internalizations, and the resulting inattentions are all afforded during a group attack. These self-inflicted mental disruptions are reinforced by those self-selecting thoughts about much-loved strikes, seen in and confirmed in actual competitive fighting. It is a sign of weakness in one's preparation for real-time defense understandings like a group attack. A fight has time to coach and pace strategies across several rounds of ring fighting. The informed preparation happens long before the actual physical fight kicks off, so what is the hold-up? This is why I start a student's journey by informing them they cannot picture an active group attack in the mind's eye. So, having defensive thoughts is a figment of your imagination, takes time and has no place in developing multiple attack defense skills. You are just dreaming of a white Christmas again, believing your preparations are going to stand up to many attackers. This approach may work for the fighting game, but not when developing multiple attacker defense. Technical imaginations are just a long-winded set of procrastinations, a result of the fear response of hesitation. At best you are trying to waste time by making a snap decision out of the imaginary mess in your head. I am sure your planned tricks will be a surprise to one attacker and then leave you searching for more when the rest of the attackers descend on you. So, the delays you encounter are always mental, a product of social conditioning playing out every day while preparing for the games we play. A connection to the rules means you are spending time analyzing and accepting propositions. Now you are ready to spend more time working out your strategies to solve the presenting problems. Socially we are conditioned to be problem solvers, ready to latch onto and become the hero with all the solutions. This has little to do with facing a violent assault, where the attackers will strike you out without warning. The social preamble is set aside, because violent people know they must hit first for their safety, not yours. Violent people do a good job feeding of our habits of hesitation. Even the thought of wanting to fight is a hesitation, not recommended for a time-strapped situation. We are socially bound to listen, to wait, sensed by your body feeling like lead, while experiencing the urgency to act against the impossible situation. The resulting feeling of stress to perform is overwhelming, so you hesitate, aiming to conserve your resources as in the freeze response. At the same time, you are aware of not showing any signs of mental weaknesses, as this will activate the attackers. It is obvious the attackers want to submit the target fast, so I ask, where has the time to hesitate gone? The socially organized person needs time to hesitate to work themselves up and create the perfect fight back. Just as a reminder, I do not think the striking snake wants to wait for your perfect response. It is the unconditioned flight response that avoids hesitation to activate the perfect reaction. The worst form of hesitation is the verbal exchange, the preamble that usually escalates into a nonsensical argument, followed by a physical altercation. The initial exchange is an act that is socially organized, formed as a justification to do harm. The relationship is being consummated like a bad marriage, it doesn't matter if you like it or not. When you are the target of many, just by attending to the verbal banter, you have made the attacking group smarter than you. The group now has the lead, and they know they have the advantage. It is a social habit to hesitate by taking the time to listen and then argue to protect your vulnerabilities. It is always your choice to connect and lose your lead to satisfy the group's proposition. Your conditioned defensive mood means you are entertaining the idea to fight back long before the physical encounter. Ask yourself, why are you not going to the toilet now or moving off to do something else, thus avoiding the requested relationship? The solution to your safety lies in not consummating the marriage by habitual posturing and hesitating. Remember, hesitation is a huge weakness, a problem of your own making. Let's say you magically came up with the idea of asking the group a great question to take back the lead, so, what are you waiting for? Get moving, disconnect. The lead must never be squandered, otherwise time is your enemy. Just by taking the time to think, you have lost control of yourself, that is why the group regains the lead while pouncing on you. So, why aren't you busy running for your life long before the proposition? Freedom is always first in mind before taking up the role of a target. Apparently, this is not what people do, they want to connect and submit their freedom by solving other people's problems. Hey. You, yes you, the reader, the person reading this book. You have just been socially grabbed to solve a problem, automatically committing yourself to a connection with the words, plus taking in an unknown relationship. It is like you are always ready to consummate the relationship and talk to anyone who requests an audience. It is the unavoidable habit we are conditioned for, making us the acceptable and effective social being. Whereas true violence will give you no warning of a connection and needs no time for social confirmations. Simply, we are not conditioned to accept isolation from other people. The issue is, we do not like to be left out. It seems it is too much of a hassle to say no, even though deep down you sense danger. Hesitation means you started the attack, leaving the attackers time to grab your attention. Secretly you know the problem is of your own making. The first rule of a battle is to never waste time. That means you do not waste valued time solving other people's problems. Get moving, stay free for your own sake. The banter beforehand is all about taking your attention, increasing your hesitation and inaction. It would be better to know group members are all cowards unable to move while connecting, needing time to psych up at your expense to do their worst. People essentially feed off each other and need time to plan their roles. It is how we create social acceptance. All those cherished connections in the martial world will not help you to regain the lead and self-efficacy. Ask yourself, are you the one that contemplates the worst by not realizing you are hesitating? Consider the time lost by overthinking and expecting a favorable outcome. If you believe your thoughts, then you are better than a fortune teller. It is only when you are moving at speed can you access useful real-time information that will serve you well without hesitation. Survival is about controlling your thoughts and not about chasing expected gremlins in and out of your head. If violence is on the menu and you hesitate, guess who will be lunch? The key to a survival response is based on the immediate full-body activation and a complete suppression of socially organized mental traps. Who's been grabbed? Allowing yourself to be grabbed mentally or physically is worse than hesitation. Most pundits think grabbing is only physical, but there is also the mental grab which is detrimental to defensive success. People are born to be grabbing machines, ready to give up our freedoms and attention for imaginary personal gains. We are like the insects lured into a Venus flytrap. Advertisers to con artists have been very successful exploiting the mental grab, taking our attention on a ride to their desired destination. To make it worse, they vigorously shake our hands to close a deal. Virtually every problem in martial arts is caused by a grab. It is a huge issue, and I am not going to do it justice in just a few words. Even these words on this page are collectively grabbing you. It is a human drive to grab and be grabbed. A grab is a grab is a grab. Just consider grabbing another person. Now you are attached to each other like two train carriages, inseparable, married, to death do us part. It takes two to tango. It is as good as a signed contract involving both parties. A grab is never one-sided, and if there are other parties to consider, they will have to wait their turn or be ignored. This is why the one-on-one fight contract gets first billing, while considering defense against a group of attackers gets virtually no attention. This explains why multiple attack situations need to be broken down into a series of fights to maintain the habit of locking onto one person at a time. Let me grab your attention for a little longer. Yes, I know you can hold a person down on the ground and ask for submission. This is a great outcome, based on one huge grab. The question seldom asked is, how did the person who was submitted get there in the first place? The trap was set long ago, even before the fight was conceived, even before starting the martial arts journey. To really know when the initial grab occurred is a little bit mental midfield, but the final submission is a result of a long series of mental grabs. The issue is your attention was taken on a ride long before the current destination, knowing some precursor persuaded you to stand and fight. A grab is a marriage where you have attached yourself to an idea that allows you to participate in that union. Resistance breeds resistance. A grab is a grab. When grabbed, you become one with another person for the duration of the attachment, where you are guilty of being one of the participants. There should never be an argument about who grabbed who. It takes two to tango. There are the obvious physical grabs, a tackle, takedown, deflections, hits. It is whatever focuses your actions and attention. Understanding the advantage gained by the grab is not the important question, it is how you accepted the contract. Attention is the mental side of the grab spectrum, and it is more powerful than any physical grab. The mental aspect takes you for a ride long before the physical grabs cause problems or success. The most interesting aspect of a mental grab can be both self-inflicted as a dream or delivered by a persuasive proposal from a socially organized statement promising advantage. During battle, the inner grabs relate to your anticipations, expectations and hesitations based on your socially conditioned inner fears. What makes inner grabs so concerning? They are the basis of all your cumulative habits throughout your life. They command your total attention no matter the situation and are not easily dismissed, even for an urgent life threat. Just remember, we allow the grab to happen, no matter who is in control. The union is made for a social purpose. This explains why no game can be played unless you have the attention of at least one person. A fight is a perfect example of consummating the inseparable union, where you agreed to play the game. Interestingly, in hindsight the grab usually makes no sense. But why did you allow it to occur? The answer to this can only be unwrapped by knowing the self. Even though a grab can take many forms, it is central to improving one's social position. Simply, the mental trap has been sprung long before any physical grab or fight. A group attack is one big grabbing machine, backed up by the numbers. Let's start with a decisive grab by asking martial people how they would solve the problem of being grabbed by many attackers. As mentioned before, a grab is a grab is a grab. Where was the initial grab? Was it the vision in a movie, or seeing a friend beaten by a group and now fear the same possibility because you live in a violent community? It is easy to grab anybody's attention and then engage them into the imaginations of self-defense solutions. The trap is set somewhere in the past, and now it is much easier to persuade you to stick around to consider fight solutions. Simply, you have agreed to the terms of this engagement, allowing the trap to work. The conditioned habit of connection is very difficult to run away from, causing you to waste time and hesitate. Socialized rules are the worst types of grabs to avoid. They are the ones set in stone by blind reasoning. The associated laws are supposed to keep you safe, but in whose head? Everything you connect with is your choice, so it is up to you to consummate the ground rules and the union. It is only natural to hesitate before a grab, as you have to check which rules are to be followed. It means a game is in play, whether you are in the lead or not. The obvious counter would be non-grab. This would mean not consummating the connection, knowing you do not want to be there in the first place. For a social person, this must sound like a lonely choice. The mantra in the energy world is freedom from any attachments, thus being the way of life without grabs, simply self-driven, meaning you have no need to satisfy other people's needs for a relationship. It is as if you are not there as a potential customer, or to buy into the proposals meant to trap the unsuspecting to follow another person's will. In the mind of the ungrabbed, there is no need to fight or to resist. This differs for a group of attackers having no choice but to grab your attention. With freedom in mind, you have decided to scurry off into invisibility like the rat. Attackers need you to acknowledge the union so they can complete their goal of dominance and control. It is a must to remember it is your choice to be a part of another person's journey. The truth is, nothing starts unless you agree. Let's begin by trapping you with a scenario where you have now been cornered by 10 attackers wanting your blood. The proposition is clear: you have been chosen by the group as the victim, already trapped both physically and mentally, asking you to escape the approaching aggression. As the grab takes effect, you check the rules of the game, now hesitating and sensing the impossibility to resist so many attackers. As mentioned before, the problem is always you, not the 10 aggressive people bearing down on you. We internalize the issues and sense the impending storm. The attackers are not there to give you freedom. They are requesting you to escape a locked box buried by tons of dirt. So, how do you get out of the locked box? Well, you can't. You have mentally connected to the proposition, and it is airtight, so to speak. The answer lies in seeing the big picture. The situation started much earlier in your life, and this is the unpleasant reminder of the real problem. Most situations can be avoided by simple awareness, helping you to avoid dangers long before the situation festers. Simply, the issue is you are grabbed, focused on the locked box, not the journey to being locked up. In truth, the attackers participating in the corner trap exercise are not really a locked box that is airtight. Your imagination has made the attacking group invincible long before being trapped. The trap was set by some smart advisor in the past, grabbing your attention and proposing a problem that cannot be solved with your short game skills. The trap was set long before the actual corner trap exercise. Why would you not go to the toilet to avoid participating in the exercise? Someone out there is stupid enough to return and give it a go. A grab is always there to focus you, like having to aim a gun to bullseye the target. This is why I like the small target approach, firstly to minimize your focus on any one target, and secondly reduce the attacker's choices to target you. Anyone can suggest a situation to focus you, aiming to narrow your choices. The focusing proposal is always to gain advantage for the aggressor. Hey, yeah, do you want to fight? It does not take much brain power to activate the social traps. As a member of society, you have long ago submitted to many propositions even before they happen. That is the power of social persuasion and suggestions. We are told who the best fighters in the world are, but have you asked, who said so, and how would you feel if you met the suggested best? You must have agreed with the leaked information, thus making you mentally vulnerable when meeting in person. It is your need to carry the monkey, be it a suggestion or inquiry. In the energy world we move at speed for good reason, as this gives us no time to think of a grab or pick a target to strike. Real-time decision-making is done at speed below consciousness without attaching to resistance. Social interactions require thinking time to process persuasions of any kind. As mentioned, operating close to real-time drives you into mental darkness, allowing the body and mind to achieve maximum efficiency. At no time do you desire to control another person's intent, as this takes time away from progressing to an exit. There can be no thoughts that indicates your commitments to the proposed game. This does not mean the brain is shut down, it means freedom from social connections. You are only free if you have no intentions to explain your actions to others. This is the opposite to how we fight. Every action must be explainable before or after the event. Just listen to teachers brook the good and bad of each technique and their experiences. In the moving world there is no chance for anticipation, expectation, or hesitation that makes up the triad of fear. The brain is operating beyond conscious thought, hence free from distractions inside and outside. This results in no time left to dream up anything to fend off resistance. Freedom is front and center. There are no thoughts of targeting or tracking of events, the mind aims to remain free from the curse of resistance. More importantly, you never feel out of control of your own actions, knowing you have taken the lead without hesitation. You are drawn to the flight response, which allows immediate full activation with no hesitation. The attacking group is not considered your problem unless you accept you are being trapped in a box. Socially, it is always the hope of victory that traps your attention whenever a fight is mentioned. The inconvenience of a grab is suppressed mentally and resisted physically, leaving people trapped until someone submits. It is not considered a big problem in martial arts, as it maintains the status quo to get people to fight. A grab has value as it can take targeted people on a ride not of their own making. Essentially, everyone wants to dream of the advantages and not consider the losses. You could ask, does it need to be changed? Not really, it is a part of the fabric of our day-to-day life, and it keeps us from being lonely, especially in martial arts. If applied to all those unattached people, it would be too costly to achieve membership targets in the arts. I have one caveat: when facing a group attack, the sensing of mental and physical grabs will have little value when you have already been trapped by the proposition. You need to understand that time is your asset when facing many attackers, not your enemy. This means no hesitation. Your life in this case depends on how long you attend to things, be it the approaching attackers or a memory. I will leave you with this thought: in the energy world we want to be invisible, so not to activate the attackers to resist harder. All grabs exist if there is a mental or physical connection with another person, so the idea is to move people's attention away from you. Head and body defense. In the energy world we are not trying to turn the head and body into weapons that will blast directly through the opponent's defenses. It is more about self-awareness that will protect one's body and head from direct impacts while moving deep into the opponent's danger zone. As mentioned, the energy world does not deliver an impressive array of dangerous defensive weapons to do the attacker in. The journey towards safety begins by finding the path of least resistance through a field of many attackers. It is wise to know your enemy before your encounter. So, in the natural world it is necessary to know people are prone to quick aggression by the desire to attack people's weaknesses, aiming to gain advantage first. The darkest inner desires are driven by the ego, that inadvertently wants to inflict damage to get the winning feeling. It usually begins with a socially organized preamble or argument followed by the physical fight, that will determine the definitive outcome of who is best. Beyond the social rules that backs who is to dominate, there is also the destruction of people's possessions that is desired to express the idea, I am dangerous, so back off. When tempers boil over, physical dominance needs to come to the fore and be recognized and respected. Of course, it is enacted by the aggressor's connection with the target's head, body and limbs as the method to achieve the victim's submission. This is well understood as the way of a martial exchange, socially prescribed by an accepted set of fight rules. It is no wonder participants are highly motivated towards their personal growth and preparation to build imposing and confident set of attack and defense tools. Even though weapons are thoughtless, martial artists are still determined to use hammers, punches, swords, headbutts and chokes to become the person who can dominate their chosen target. In the energy world, a person aims to redirect the attacker's attention away from doing damage by dampening their beloved firepower. It is important to know the instinct to hurt another is a part of the natural world, and it is admired within our socially prescribed arenas as a signature of success. I cannot say we should justify violence per se, but for interested young minds it is confirmation enough as a way to get ahead in this world. All this damage occurs because the perpetrator wants to feel powerful from within. It is uplifting to feel like you can lift 1,000 pounds and break through the toughest of resistance. The focus on perfectionism leads to bound dedication and obsession to steamroll all who threaten one's self-worth. The achievements are expected to create huge impacts on chosen targets, from enhanced strength, speed and weaponry developed in conjunction with social approval. I always felt the natural world was like taking part in a car crash against a big truck. I think it is fine to use all parts of the body for strikes and grabs to drive the select opponent into subjective submission. All I can say, it would not be a wise move to stand in the middle of the road waiting to be struck and be run over by a speeding vehicle. Something always has to give, be it you or your opponent, which turns out to be the fun of participating in combat sports. The battle ram approach is still the focus in most martial approaches, increasing damage effectiveness by the permitted rules. In unannounced violence there is no smooth transition to submission, especially during a multiple attack, where the target is presented with the impossible. So, who in their right mind would not contemplate improving their impact as a means to stop aggression to achieve safety? In the energy world, there are no weapons of mass destruction, but continuity of motion is the desired way to find the path of least resistance to achieve one's safety. This means avoiding any connection with resistance, avoiding any mental and physical connections with attackers. It is about allowing more time to move where the attacker cannot establish a counter move to do harm, by moving quickly at speed into areas that disrupt the attacker's timing and perceptions to instigate their worst. Strangely enough, this is another example of a small target approach that forces the attacker to adjust their intent and choices. Traditional artists need to view their advantage before activating their strategy, just like a preemptive strike. This leaves lost perceptual time seeing the unfolding of the attacking group, subjecting you to the onslaught of unseen opportunists to down you fast. As with a magician, the energy world takes advantage of these periods of overfocus and hesitation to quickly slip into this gap of inattention to enter the second safety zone to void the incoming flak. This is why the energy world is so effective. It activates the whole system for speed by staying ready to pounce in real time. Fighters remain trapped in the danger zone due to their hand-dominated strategies requiring over-reliance on mental and physical connections. The termed head and body defense, by its name, sounds like some hopeful effective technical strategy that will keep you safe. It is more to do with avoiding the connection with dangerous weapons by moving the one system at speed by remaining as a small target. To stop and look at the opponent's advantage is always a matter of giving up your freedom to find safety first. The aim is to break through the weakened resistance as one unit, and not split the system to shield or deflect the attack that is about to happen. Simply, you have to outrun the attacker's intent to do you harm. Let's start with a personal experience of battle, by understanding our desire to do harm and the reason we believe it is best for one's protection. We love the feedback attack impact creates when encountering our targeted opponents as a measure of protection, which tends to run counter to how we think of safety in a car. The smooth entry into the danger zone and out is only considered acceptable when the situation appears uncontrollable and unwinnable. All I can say is, as martial people, we are in love with resistance, feeling enlivened by fierce training as the path to make you stronger and more powerful. This self-liked focus is best exemplified when secretly observing exponents enjoying tensing their muscles to extreme, to feel their internal strengths and imagined potential. This self-love has been reinforced in many gyms, where traditional martial artists perform long sequences of muscle tensing and exhausting postures. Thus, the need for mirrors. Whatever you use to source the evidence of your strength and power, it is a far cry of what is needed during a real-time response, like jumping back from a snake. There is always more magic out there, where power and strength are concerned, but it is an attractive focus to drive people to do more harm. Let's take the example of self-awareness, where a person blindly walks into an unseen pole, experiencing one's body create a huge impact, able to rattle a whole building. Wow, this has to be useful to do harm, now thinking there is something valuable to learn about the body's mass effect. Followed up by timely imaginations of the prospect of creating an effective, powerful body weapon. Yes, without question, there is a serious amount of energy being released on impact that should be useful in fighting. This is not a discussion about the energy world, but more to do with how we are attracted to power and strength to strong-arm any opponent. Through this book, I have advocated the use of the whole body as one unit, not as a weapon as such, but to maintain a consistency of speed and energy as long as possible when facing many attackers. It is our attraction to power and strength in the natural world's way of thinking that takes our attention away from safety, all for a method to dominate and counter resistance. Whatever you're leaning, the stand-up game and ground game with its intense focus on power and strength will end with sore heads and bodies. This conception of trying to replicate the value of a body-made impact to become that definitive weapon has little to do with the energy world. It is akin to being another technique that will consume valued time anticipating and expecting results. Also, it will require your body to brace like a stiff panel waiting for impact and pain. It has a beginning and end, best designed for the short game. Even worse, time will be lost on recovery and reloading, all aimed for that explosive return to battle out of your protective bunker. Drawing these ideas together for a potential powerful body weapon appears to be a possibility and could be effective as a head and body defense. As a reminder, in the energy world, motion requires continuity to be effective in this long game, aiming to stay energized in the midst of multiple resistances. It is obvious you do not want to stand in the middle of a freeway facing many moving cars just to prove your worth with your new body weapon. So, any thoughts of power and strength and the resulting deadly weapon will split the one system, resulting in slowed progress to safety. The natural world is everyone's world, where all interested parties in battle have been conditioned for an expected impact by a simple brace and counter. In the energy world we like the unexpected. Why? Firstly, this is achieved by moving at speed to begin the mental suppression of the need for connections with people and objects. Any connection is considered either a mental or physical grab that immediately narrows one's thoughts to one focus. It is the problem of the intense focus when threading a needle, to what cost of not seeing the unfoldings of the approaching attackers and their weapons. Secondly, if speed is to be maintained, resistance has to be dealt with in a way that does not stall your progress to a safe exit. Thirdly, safety is the main concern, measured by your freedom from internal and external resistances. Fourthly, inattention then encapsulates the magic required to make you invisible to socially organized aggressive people, like a group attack. Please review inattention by looking up the Invisible Gorilla experiment on YouTube. To counter those socially conditioned aggressors is to work your magic into the gaps between attentions, where attackers' thoughts of the real world are internalized. As mentioned before, the counter in the energy world is like throwing a better question at the attackers than their proposition of numbers and advantage. I have discussed already looming and reduction as ways to change the attacker's choices to do harm. In both these cases, impact does not really take place due to attackers' hesitation and choice paralysis, lending to the embracement of inaction. This may sound far-fetched, but not to leave readers struggling to understand, I created the story about a group of hungry cats and the rat to emphasize the value of disconnection and speed of the one system as an effective head and body defense. Moving the head and the body as one unit is the basis of understanding how the one system stays together. The advantage is twofold: one, it effectively allows you to change direction close to real time, and two, your attention is focused on the path of least resistance towards an exit. When the head and body act as one unit, it helps with safety by allowing you to outrun the attacker's intent. It is only when you glance sideways to measure aggression, splitting attention does not allow you to enter the second safety zones, allowing the attackers to measure you and the time to counter your attempt at the more technical duck and weave. In the energy world we remain invisible due to suppression, not to connection, both mentally and physically with others, and speed of progression. This as a strategy allows you to identify and move through the weaker layers of resistance presented by many attackers. At times attackers experience the enormous energy produced by the one system in motion, but this is not intentional. This is a side effect and is not intended to be a weapon of choice. If so, it would be seen, and you will be taken down. The defense is the ability to take advantage of real-time skills that can only be accessed by moving at speed in a consistent manner. This as an experience is no more about bracing for impact or reloading after a strike or to counter another's offense. When operating in the energy world, the aim is to disturb the attacker's defensive base, that is exposing their deep-seated fears of being an imposter that hides behind all attackers' faces. The resulting effect on the attacker is more mental than physical, which is very disturbing to the fighter's confidence. A large proportion of skills are derived from the tools used by magicians to create inattention that neutralizes the attacker's intent before they can act to do harm. When in the energy world, one's skills takes advantage of the approaching attacker's visual weaknesses related to conditioned defensive predictions to achieve head and body defenses in the midst of chaotic dangers. The attacker's minds have been invaded without the predictive advantage that usually holds people accountable to socially contracted rules that usually beset the layout and timings of the playing field. When a person is not split mentally and physically, there are no questions to answer and problems to solve, therefore no time is spent anticipating punches, kicks and grabs. This is a great way to feel more comfortable with the expected chaos of a multiple attack. When using the whole body as one unit and at speed, there is no way or time to mount a counter-offensive against a singular resistance. What makes it so effective as a strategy based on illusion? It suppresses the experience of a chaotic and violent attack in the real world. Standing there looking silly in the middle of the freeway cannot be a pleasant experience for a person who has spent a lifetime aiming to control and dominate any approaching offense. When viewing an energy world-driven exponent, they will appear uncooperative and antisocial by seeing that there are no reciprocal responses to a violent attack to gain advantage. This is the very reason fighters have to accentuate their mental gaps, thinking too much about the person's deviance, thus delaying expected victories. This is real magic at work. It is the act of internalizing and delaying the attacker's plans to attack, weakening the layers of their defensive resistances to grab you and take you down. All you see in front of you is the safe underbrush to pass through to get to an exit. This is like not wanting to slam your face into the floor when falling. A simple change in direction in real time produces the inbuilt protective responses that switches worlds to free yourself from anguish. Review theory, it stipulates that upper, middle and lower parts of the body must keep moving at the same velocity and direction. Any split from the E-percept will reduce speed and momentum, allowing more time for the attackers to identify your intent to slow and defend yourself. The movement of your body only remains free when speed is maintained, otherwise it is not an effective head and body defense. Because the natural world wants control over people's thoughts, this has driven most strategic thinking into slowed linear series of acts that misses the realities of unfoldings occurring at speed all around a person. The problem is, we are all socially organized in the natural world and are driven to deliver targeted impacts on one seeable threat. So, we spend precious time measuring and planning the situation in slow and linear ways long before executing an appropriate response. The extra information needed to understand a multiple attack becomes the impossible task outside the training hall due to its low predictability. Eye-hand coordination. Both your eyes and hands are easily distracted by an opponent's actions due to a lifetime of social and martial conditionings. By linking or aligning eyes and hands into one action will unconsciously direct the body to act as a kinetic chain for precision and power. The eyes are a person's draw card for security for most of your waking hours, by measuring sense changes in the environment down to the finest directed motions to control an object like a needle. Keeping in mind eyes have very sensitive detectors of movement and changes in light to assess dangers set before us daily in a world of unpredictable environments. The eye's contributions can be assessed further by trying to understand how we can reflexively jump back from a yet-to-be-recognized snake. Our senses are designed to trigger from both the fast unconscious and other more considerate conscious forms of responses. The hands are also sensitive instruments of detection that can reflexively pull back from touching a stranger or grabbing an unseen mosquito out of the air and sensing the kill. It is only when the hands and the eyes pair up to work together, the world opens new possibilities of design and control. Now, this becomes the way to interact with a world beset with objects in a continuous way to mold ourselves into safety in a controlled paced way. With our smarts we can clear away difficulties that may interfere with our desired outcomes. The resulting eye-hand coordination informs us of measured resistances and timings of our reach. Humans have been blessed with the addition of fine motor skills that allows us to do all things human that helps with the safety and control of the environment around us. In martial arts our movements are created and executed because of the relationship between our eyes and hands in relation with the opponent's strategic resistance. Essentially, eye-hand coordination combines to measure our involvements and attachments with attackers. As an observed phenomenon, we put our hand out all too easily for defense to regulate our speed of approach and commitment. This means the closer the object is, the more likely we will reach out and touch the object of interest. It also determines the time spent intercepting and manipulating the object for gains. The extended hand is a measurement device able to regulate position and commitment to one's focus. This can only occur if the hand is passive and has no intention to respond in kind to a perceived threat. This is like the task of the insect's feelers projecting forward as a way of sensing and being forewarned of danger ahead. The hands can act as feelers, operating as a second pair of eyes to sense resistance in advance of what vision cannot measure, to be able to adjust for a series of defensive reactions. Eye-hand coordination together then combines to be very effective in locking onto both passive and active targets, aiming for control and focus on planned executions. The completion of each of these focal tasks forfeits the use of other sensory inputs to register changes involving bigger picture issues. The passive approach allows time to set up targeted and well-timed eye-hand coordination seen when applying martial arts techniques. So, every time you punch or grab, your eyes and hands act as measuring devices aiming to complete a set series of tasks. So having a good eye-hand coordination sets up the fighter with a conditioned mindset that is easily outpaced by the more active approaches of an unruled and uncooperative opponent. In the energy world, eye-hand is seen as a defensive move that splits the one system, allowing attention to become focal and stalling progress away from finding safety. If allowed to be used, it becomes the go-to for the effective and imagined technique, like the much-desired fist designed to go through someone's head. I ask you, would this be costly to your life when facing multiple attackers? This is not a good strategy beyond a two-person social fight. Eye-hand focus relates to our social need for fine motor skills that will allow us to navigate most of our everyday living tasks, like fighting for a prize. This is very different to the gross motor controls needed to keep reactions at speed escaping those social hungry predators. It is easy to assess your attachment to eye-hand coordination by checking if you slow to a stop in preparation to restart your action again and again. This fits the common observation of seeing flurries of techniques, then the pause, reload and reset combo, all used to measure the next series of offensive moves. In the energy world, we are looking for continuity of motion that fills energy reserves by having no intentions to interact with resistance. It is only when you add in speed of progression into the equation can one appreciate the disengagement of eye-hand coordination as a survival strategy. The reaction of putting your hand out or bunkering to stop entry to your face being smashed only assists the attacking group to capture its prey. It is only when you understand the use of the one system can you appreciate the value of jumping back from a striking snake to a safe distance. I will now return my discussion back to the phenomenon of sensory darkness that has some of the answers to the query, why is hand-eye coordination not desired during a multiple attack? It is great for fighting and those on-the-floor training exercises that need to be timed and executed with precision and safety in mind. Eye-hand coordination requires the body to slow and reach the target of interest to control the expected outcomes. In the energy world, the hands operate as a balancing device to maintain speed and act over short distances unconsciously to help the body to maintain its continuity of speed. The hands may look like they are under the active control of the eyes and the mind, but this is far from the truth. The body works at its most efficient when it experiences mental darkness, where the conscious precepts are suppressed to maintain effective speed of flight. The eyes lose sight of the hands by the magic of the brain's survival response, suppressing their conscious representations in space, allowing them to freely move when necessary to achieve progressive safety. This cannot happen when you grab or punch, forcing the eyes to trace their trajectories until the task is completed and checked. The natural world of interactions and connections is all too reinforcing and habit-making, making them poor representations of real-time responses. You can close your eyes and still pick up a cup full of water due to the internalized plan that cannot be flexibly changed. In the natural world, paused progress is the norm, making it impossible to redirect your actions. Like letting go of the arrow, nothing is going to change the trajectories and outcomes. This is why martial arts is so attractive. The arrow flies unhindered to do its expected maximum damage. Once complete, the fighter has to check if these planned actions were successful or worthwhile to do again. So, not to put too much cold water on visible hands, in the energy world they are considered a big mind trap that takes time to master, costing real-time flexibility needed when dealing with chaotic situations like a multiple attack. Even though the hands disappear into mental darkness in the energy world, they are adjusting to real-time needs to keep the body moving at speed to a safe exit. This is another example of assessing if your ideas are timely and not your enemy. Checking one's handiwork is a sure sign you are using eye-hand coordination, beset by confirmation biases dreamt up during years of training. Stay in the light. The idea of staying in the light is meant to represent actual visual consciousness of your surroundings. The alternative is to close your eyes as one would do to go to sleep when feeling safe. It is only natural to open your eyes to assess your progress to a desired destination, like looking out of the car's window at the scenery moving by, while assessing your trajectory on life's expectant path. The other way to stay in the light, so to speak, is to live in the enlightened world of internalized thoughts, which also can be darkened by a bump on the head. Not to forget the quick way to switch off the light by anesthesia and the much-loved knockout by a big hit or choking. Within the world of fighting and self-defense, much is made of seeing and assessing the situation before responding. For example, how do you stop this punch question? With this in mind, hand-dominated martial artists have to dig their way out of mental ignorance and mental darkness as fast as possible to get back to the light. In contrast, in the energy world, the aim is to thrive during uncertainty and periods of mental darkness. This differentiation alone should be enough of a way to understand we can use different drivers to deal with violence. One of the defensive tools in the energy world is to drive people in the natural world into darkness, aiming to make them feel very uncomfortable and not focused on doing you harm. Fighters do not like to operate in mental darkness, but when faced with the prospect, they will bunker or turn away, seeking a lighter moment for their security. This is not to say the light is not important in the energy world. It is just that both light and dark mental experiences are used to assess one's freedom from resistance and progress to a safe exit. As a more acceptable explanation, in a two-person fight, the energy world practitioners use darkness as the main defensive weapon of choice to achieve disconnection, but when dealing with the extremes of a multiple attack, the aim is to never lose sight of the light. Two important ways to experience the light is, one is to go into darkness when entering the flak zone only to fight quickly back to the light, and two, keep moving without connection like running, never to lose sight the path ahead. In the natural world, the need for eye-hand coordination to target objects goes without question, giving the impression that moving around a dark room will be no picnic. In essence, light or vision is the most salient sense to measure connection. This has everything to do with adjusting your preparedness to attack by the value of good lighting, gaining the information needed to trigger your best defense. But there is an irony: fighters are averse to darkness, always needing to find the light to check their handiwork and reset the parameters of the next attack. What is not well understood is how a fighter's attack incorporates darkness to achieve their dominance goals. Firstly, at the thinking level, where developing and planning strategy, the internalized world of martial defense counterattacks really can light up one's hope for victory. These mental simulations play with the brightest light there is, but in truth the real world already has changed and moved on, thus the person has experienced a period of mental darkness. Now, think about this comment carefully in relation to the idea of being present. As mentioned before, the martial motto is to use repetition for training right, having worked a treat in a predictable organized world, but not so well during the chaos of a multiple attack. Most fighters will know a flurry of strikes overloads consciousness, causing the protective period of mental darkness, but with the confidence of social conditioning, the fight inadvertently resets many times, and for how many rounds. This reset experience is really reinforcing as a motivator for the fight world, helping exponents return to the comfort of light for longer. Of course, it will be extremely unpleasant when experiencing lights out after being knocked out. The journey to understand light and darkness is a matter delving into how the brain works under life-threatening stress. Darkness occurs unknowingly every time you want more from your body systems when facing the impossible task like a multiple attack. Adding insult to injury, the imagined boost is just that: the body naturally is designed to brace when facing an extreme threat, expecting greater impacts, together distorting your perceptions of being even more dangerous than your preparedness, which is far from the truth. It is not rocket science to understand the body's habit of defensive bunkering, but the suppression of the response is far more dangerous than you think. The mind has no intention to maintain mental clarity when bunkering; it is more likely to call for the gods for help. This is further accentuated when there are many attackers bearing down on you, ready to do you harm. Seen when the target loses hope when beaten, wisely bunching up on the ground in a ball, covering the head as expected, screaming uncontrollably for mummy. The pervasive attitude of martial artists tapping into the extra is really the precursor of mental bunkering unfoldings from a vigorous beginnings of counter-defenses, only to climax in the much-recognized berserk mode. Not to say it too loud, few martial practices train for the extremes of stress produced when facing an effective group attack. Not to be too harsh on the martial world, the group attack is a rare event, allowing current imaginations to be enough to deter the meek. Yet, the problem is real and more frequent than people think. At present, people's minds are controlled by the confirmation that fighting in a public arena is all there is to know. The idea of a well-focused group attack is very hard to implement when fighting skills spend an eternity getting the job done to submit the individual. The uncontested harder and faster solution means you are going to do everything even faster than anticipated, at the same time never asking the obvious, how does this increase in speed changes skills and outcomes? I have suggested being careful not to delude yourself with those on-the-floor demonstrations where the meme of harder and faster is the way for exponents to say yes to all things impossible. Please do not forget, resistance breeds resistance, aggression breeds aggression, especially if both parties want to fight and prove a point. Not to mention, the target only has seconds to be successful against many attackers. Maybe the experts are right, just knock them all out. Job done, not. As mentioned, you would have been more effective and dangerous if you were able to keep the mind clear and seeing the big picture, not just the person in front of you to be destroyed. Seeing the light with real-world clarity only occurs when you are moving at speed. When you stop to think, the mind goes internal to seek the brightness of that conditioned decoy lighthouse that resides inside your much-loved perceptions that appears to be even more real than the happenings in the outside world. By maintaining your presence in the real world when driving is not a bad analogy of being in the light. But when looking at passing events and talking on the phone internalizes thoughts dragging attention away from the unfoldings occurring in front of you. The light is not a new concept, all they are saying when driving with distractions it will cause mental darkness and accidents. When moving your attention towards real time, like finding the path of least resistance when running down a thickly wooded hill, should indicate we spend most of our waking life in visual darkness. As ridiculous as this may sound, there is a truth that needs to be investigated further if you disagree. So, it is when you really think you have to defend yourself, darkness looms large on your stage, where you are in La La Land, when you think you have a handle on the situation. Yes, darkness is a great way to make your actions more efficient as the senses are suppressed in consciousness, leaving the faster unconscious responses rise to the surface. This is good and well to say, but people in the natural world cannot stand the dark or what it represents. It is like the saying, who wants to be left in the dark? I have to laugh, as this is not what people thrive on during their daily imaginations that come across as real. Enlightenment are those wonderful moments of insight developed from selective snapshots imagined as real from an actual event. This must sound very familiar to what was said during the previous discussion on snapshots. Everything is interconnected, even the understanding of light and darkness. The hard part is getting your head around the nuances and quirky ways of thinking of the world and its truths. Ask yourself why you bunker when you expect pain. Of course, physical bunkering is necessary to protect you from serious injury or expected pain. I like to call out this as an addiction, knowing there is an excitement related to a fight when you can come out of darkness able to continue with a series of counter-responses to the much-wanted submission. When you are in the light, surprisingly it is not for the good life, as the changing world around is too chaotic and stressful. We like order and rules to make excursions into the light less frequent and salient. We repeat everything in expectation of having a handle on the event next time, where our internal images are designed to be much less stressful and making sure not to expose that inner imposter that lurks in the back of your head. Ouch, the randomness of a multiple attack tends to shut down a person's confidence to look beyond the expected dangers. I have seen people of high reputation stand in front of 10 attackers, that makes up the corner trap exercise, posturing strongly, ready to prove a point, suddenly throwing hands up saying, "You guys are crazy." I would say the internal world of thought cannot match the light of the external world. Mental darkness is more prevalent in the natural world than people give that experience credence. In the world of physical survival, being in the light is central to any predator response, confirming the value of being present and primed to pounce and dominate. This fits the situation demands placed on one's actions when facing a multiple attack. Darkness is really the go-to when facing one attacker, quickly silencing their mind with a mental overload, shocking them into defenseless mental darkness. Only then resistance is futile. If done well, the domination of the target will be done with ease. From the viewpoint of the attackers, there appears to be little to do but take the target out of the light by numbers and firepower. As long as darkness is felt, the target will submit to the onslaught, all because of a mental imagined equation that appeared to be unsolvable, rendering the multiple attackers successful. But, if the target is uncooperative, the effect of darkness returns to the attackers, having to reposition and reassess their plans. As security staff know, a simple counter of shouting out "stop" or the brightness of a flashlight in the eyes will counter one's experience of feeling vulnerable looking for solutions. Thus, aggression has been thrown back into darkness, requiring the group time to find an appropriate counter. Fine-tuning darkness and the light. The skill of staying in the light comes about by moving the one system at speed. As a reminder, the energy world plays the long game, that is, no stops and checks on glory and success while progressing to an exit. I have compared the idea to running through a thickened forest, only focused on looking ahead, while maintaining the path of least resistance. To even go further to fine-tune the understanding, your progress is determined by this path of least resistance. This can only be done if you are looking ahead of your physical actions, ascribing to finding the way of less and less resistance presented by the puzzling wall of undergrowth. As soon as you target an object for whatever reason or even brush aside an annoying branch, you have just experienced a moment of darkness requiring a mental reset to find a new path ahead, which will obviously break one's consistency of motion and the one system. Staying in the light in a consistent way has to be inextricably linked to staying present and feeling energized. It is by taking snapshots of up-and-coming safe spaces that keeps you moving ahead at speed, not the immediate distractions of those potential resistances just in front of you. Looking ahead smooths the way to your destination or goal in the most efficient and timely manner. The term flow or in the groove suggest good physical and mental continuity of actions and vision, a good understanding of staying in the light. If you focus on an impressionable target, you will do several intentional and unintentional actions that require you to think and measure your responses, like threading a needle that will disrupt the one system that maintains continuity of motion. This means you have split not only your attention across several issues, you also have created enormous blind spots stopping you seeing the unfolding of the bigger picture of the attacking group. We have been conditioned to focus our attention for a moment's gain at the cost of safety from what the multiple attackers are about to deliver. It is only natural to control everything that stands in your way. The strategy of staying in the light is alien, and yet for anyone who drives a car cannot close their eyes or dream on, for what reason. It is our way to stay safe and free from resistances that could damage the car or, worse still, take your life and family. If you are thinking, you are not seeing the external worlds as what is, as well as missing real-time unfoldings, you are not present. So, you are clearly not seeing real light, you are just imagining the representations and experiences of a world that only exists inside your head. This is why I say when executing a technique, its primordial origins came from the internal recognitions of captured distorted moments or snapshots you recognize to best fit the key and lock together. We are so attached to this internal way of feeling secure, day in and day out, hammering the mantra to repeat, repeat, repeat till you condition the best mental calluses. The good news: this has worked well for a two-person social fight based on rules and white lines, much like what a chessboard delivers to capture gameplay. It is no wonder we see the big and definitive strike being the go-to strategy during a multiple attack, hoping to knock out each opponent one after another until checkmate. This may be another example of the martial demonstration of brick breaking, encapsulating the yell and wish for no pain, completing one's experience of the dislikes of mental darkness. Staying in the light means you are always present, moving as close to real-time as possible without splitting attention from the path ahead. This can only occur at speed, very similar to driving a car. It is not some masterful skill as such. It is a matter of not being distracted from the flow. As with driving, you cannot daydream for too long without something going terribly wrong. In a group attack, the aim is to not focus on any one attacker for ego-satisfying beliefs to dominate the situation from repeated successes developed on the training floor. This as a vision goes counter to most martial practices. The accepted martial approach is to always connect and fight, be successful only if you have trained hard enough, meaning firstly thinking of an offense and secondly plan that big hit. At no time do these approaches consider the inattention created by sending people into internal darkness. The good thing, this is not such a concern in the current fight world, as all things related to mixed martial arts has proven to be valuable in social defined situations. My discussion so far aims to indicate there is an avalanche of darkness to experience when facing a multiple attack. As with the analogy of the car driver's lack of mindfulness, things will go wrong very quickly. In the natural world we all fulfill our wish to successfully fight and win, but on the other hand without attention to being present during a group attack, your losses will be life-threatening. There is not enough time to target and eliminate everyone during a multiple attack. I assert, do not make time your enemy, stay in the light with speed, and stay present and respond better to the big picture. With traditional technical training and small-time scenario exercises based on eye-hand coordination, always will need to put brakes on progress to the chosen target, never to get into the groove. The natural world is obsessed with problem-solving based on salient moments, fabricated and captured by sensory snapshots of reality. The resultant distortions become those finely tuned and trustworthy strategies designed to achieve the elusive win. The obsession for control of all things real will send you into darkness faster than you can think. Not to mention this again, the ideas of giving it your all is set aside for those rare situations that are out of your control like a multiple attack. The four white walls of the gym are the place where you can dream and create those fantastical self-fulfilling outcomes trapped between rules of society and what you can imagine. There is little need to drive yourself forward into uncharted territories wanting to make decisions in the present unless you really want the most efficient way to get to your destination. The shortest distance between 2 points may be a straight line, but why are you overloaded with your infinite number of technical choices? It is no wonder why people get trapped by hesitant paralysis when facing many attackers. Yes, your eyes and hands and whatever needs to be well coordinated like a dancer looking in the mirror wanting something special. This self-love attitude is attractive in the arts, but not what is wanted when in the midst of many attackers hell-bent to do you harm. It is speed and holding the one system together. This is what is important when you want to extend your experience to stay in the light. Fighting one opponent is the natural go-to solution, but it is a sure way to enter many periods of unwanted mental darkness. Staying in the light means that you are moving consistently through resistance, and you are feeling free to live on. Again, this is a small target approach, where your eyes, hands and body move as one, not splitting to reach any target or object. In the natural world attackers are conditioned to connect to and respond quickly to punches, grabs and weapons. This is not so for an uncooperative antisocial person moving at speed with no intention to make a name for oneself. In the natural world you look at attackers as objects to overcome or defeat with something you have trained a lot. I would think this is a good example of not knowing your enemy. Also it goes against societal beliefs that preparedness is the way to be successful. To stay in the light means nothing to a fighter, but mental darkness unrecognized has been advantageous to avoid the fear triad of anticipation, expectation and hesitation. Darkness unknowingly created the valued disconnect to avoid the pain of impact on each entry but enhanced the martial addiction that hold the arts together for eternity. It is only natural for all of us to look and connect with our chosen targets and then get our dose of cocaine by exploding momentarily into the danger zone to achieve the expected goal of victory, over and over again. The familiar unfolding of a fight is given all the claps and support the longer it plays out in front of an audience. I have mentioned before the attacking group is not the problem, it is you, trapped in a social statement. So, it is about getting a hold of your wayward thoughts. It is only then you will experience flow, the connectedness of the uncertainties presented by close to real inputs. If you think and predict, you will go dark at crucial moments, leaving holes in your defenses. Everything we learn and do in the energy world is about the self, not to satisfy our social monkey for recognition. So, do you want to fight? It is only when you are coming out of darkness that you see and sense the extra threats. All fighters and experts fight back hard when coming out of momentary darkness to get back to the light. People do not turn away from extreme threats for nothing. The reason is as simple as they need to see the light. Hint, by exacerbating the time in darkness during a socially organized fight is like shining a flashlight in a person's eye experiencing debilitating whiteout. All mental shutdowns are about getting back to the light, so to speak. Darkness can be thought of as a tool to get into your opponent's head, a good example of knowing the enemy. There is always more to talk about and expand on, stay tuned. Yes, there is a part 4 in the pipeline,